Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Let's Talk Seahawks podcast. I'm your host, Robert Smith, along with my co-host, Adam Carver-Stellman. Today, we'll be going over our top 10 linebacker prospects in the 2023 NFL Draft. Adam, let's talk Seahawks.
Yeah, let's talk linebackers. So this is a little bit of a different position group for me because I think some of the groups we've been talking about, especially when we talked about edge rushers and defensive line prospects, that seems like a big area of need. If you take a look at the Seahawks roster right now, even though I think linebacker isn't necessarily a very deep group for us, those starting spots are fairly locked up, right? I mean, Bobby Wagner's back. We signed Devin Bush to a 2-year deal, or is it a 1-year deal? Maybe it's a 1-year deal. And we're hoping that Brooks comes back and can be the player he was before the injury. So there really doesn't appear, at least, to be a need for a starter at the position. But I think that's still up for discussion because it does. I mean, we don't know how long Bobby's going to be still playing for the Seahawks. Right now, it's a 1-year contract. Is this just a 1-year rental? Is Bobby going to come back later? Who knows? And what does he look like back in the Seahawks field? And with Brooks, who knows if he's going to come back the same guy he was before? And is that what we want? Because if you go back and look at the tape between his first 2 years with us, when he wasn't asked to be the middle linebacker because we had Bobby there, he looked like he was going to be a great player for us. And I think he took a pretty big step back. Now, I think the whole defense did. Switching to a new scheme is a little bit troublesome. I think a lot of guys took a little bit of time to get up to speed there, and Brooks was definitely one of them. But he, unlike some of the other guys, he really didn't seem to show the progression as the season went on. So is this a good scheme fit still for Brooks? So maybe this is a bigger need than I think it is. And unfortunately for this year's draft, this isn't a really deep class. I think there are a lot of linebackers out there that are draft eligible, but whether or not we have starting caliber linebackers in this draft all the way through, I think that's up for debate. I think some of the guys that we're going to be discussing here are draftable, certainly, and they could come in and contribute, but I don't know if this is as deep as some of the other positions in this draft class. I don't know if we're going to be finding starters in day 3.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think this is a weak class. I think we have some really good players and some players who will play key roles on teams, but maybe not guys that you think could come in right away and challenge for a starting spot. We have brought Bobby Wagner back. That's huge. I think that was definitely something we were missing last year. We brought Devin Bush in. I think he's going to do a decent job. I think him at the level he played post-injury in Pittsburgh will be better than what Brooks gave us last year. So right there, instant upgrade while Brooks is recovering. But yeah, we don't have a lot of future in our linebacking core. We don't have Tanner Muse anymore. We don't have Cody Barton. Both of those guys were converted safeties. Those were guys who excelled in coverage. And we don't have any guy who can be a coverage backer on our roster right now. I like John Radigan, but he's not a coverage guy. And so if they draft a linebacker, I think they might target somebody who can fill that role, because we have Brooks who did okay in coverage, but he's really more of that run defender, high IQ, diagnose plays kind of guy. And you don't want him always having to go split out on a tight end or match up with a running back coming out of the backfield.
Yeah.
So it's tough because, like you said, this is a weak class and we don't have good depth of contract on the roster right now. So I'd be really interested to see if the Seahawks target a linebacker, or if they say, oh, we'll throw a few undrafted free agent darts at the wall. We'll see if somebody sticks in camp. If not, we'll roll with this and we'll hit it in free agency next year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And with that high praise, let's get into this draft class.
All righty. So the way we're doing this top 10 is both of us are going to present our top 5 as far as how we have them listed on our board. See, the dogs are trying to get into it too. They're just mad that we don't have a top 10 dog list for them.
Apologize about that to our listeners. Usually they are pretty quiet. Apparently they've just decided to be answering to the neighbors' dogs. While Robbie introduces the rest of this lineup, I'm going to lock them out of the room.
So we're both going to have our top 10 value guys on our boards. Then we're going to spotlight 3 players who we think will go in the middle rounds of the draft. Guys who can have value, guys we like to see in that 3rd, 4th, 5th round area. And then we'll have 2 guys that we consider late round prospects. And so those guys are guys that we like, might be an undrafted free agent, might be a 6th, 7th round pick, but somebody who has traits that we like and that we wanted to spotlight in our list. So we're actually going to start off with those late round guys. So at number 10, I have Aubrey Miller Jr. out of Jackson State, and Adam has Jalen Moody from Alabama. Aubrey Miller Jr., really like him. Solid player at Jackson State, a little bit lesser competition level, but Jackson State was a beast last year under the tutelage of Deion Sanders. So,
prime time.
You know, he brought some good guys in there, right? Iron sharpens iron. Those guys went against each other in practice every day. They showed it. I believe they had an undefeated season. I mean, they were playing some good football in Jackson State. He was really good in coverage, one of the best. In fact, his PFF coverage grade was a 91.8. He was the 2022 SWAC Defensive Player of the Year. So he showed up every week, right? You look for consistency in production, and that's a really good way to see if these guys can handle the load. He isn't perfect. I mean, he's a fluid athlete, so I think he will make somebody's team immediately on special teams to have an impact. He'll be a rotational linebacker, but he's somebody who I think is getting better every year, and he could crack somebody's starting lineup or at least be a rotational guy who contributes. He does have a tendency to over pursuit, maybe misdiagnose some plays in run defense. Those are things that can be coached up. He may have been a little too athletic and overran some things. So we'll see how that pans out. But yeah, Aubrey Miller Jr. from Jackson State is somebody I have my eye on late in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really well-rounded guy. I mean, you were talking about, obviously he had the benefit of learning from Coach Prime, who knows what it's like to be a star in the NFL. For those of you that don't know who Coach Prime is, that's Deion Sanders. That is possibly the greatest cornerback in NFL history. So if you want someone to teach you how to be a coverage defender, you could do worse than learning from Prime Time. Yeah, really hard to find tape on this guy. I was able to see a couple of highlights, and that was mainly thanks to finding Deion Sanders interviews where they had his players playing in the background while he was talking. But I was able to watch a little bit of game tape on him. And yeah, this looks like a really well-rounded player. I mean, he's a fifth-year senior, so obviously he's got experience at the position. They run a four-down front in Jacksonville. So he was primarily that will linebacker, which is going to be that focus on the backfield coverage guy, take care of the flats. So he was really relied on for those coverage skills. He was asked to blitz though at times, and he acquitted himself pretty well there. So he's got the skill to be a little bit more well-rounded. Yeah, so he would be a pretty good complement if we've got Bobby manning that middle of the field, or whoever, or even if it's Brooks manning that middle part. So yeah, this is a guy that I think if the Seahawks did target late and brought in, he has the skills to contribute in our scheme, which is great.
Yeah, and of course, when Adam said Jacksonville, he meant Jackson, Mississippi.
I did indeed, and not, of course, the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is a completely different team and ostensibly a professional football team. So,
yeah. So Jalen Moody out of Alabama, definitely a guy that I had to go find tape on. Well, gives a ton of Alabama tape, but as far as stuff where I can specifically watch Moody, so I was interested to see him as your number 10.
Yeah. So sorry guys, let's stop that, reverse it, go back, pretend I didn't just fumble my words. So the reason why I like Jalen Moody is there are times where, and again, this is Alabama, so that these are all pretty much superstars at their position. They have some of the best incoming classes of freshmen. So it's hard to make an impact on that team unless you're an absolute superstar like his running mate is, Will Anderson Jr. He was asked to kind of come in. Usually he was spelling Will Anderson Jr. when he was off the field, which wasn't very often. But on occasion, they would put him on the opposite side there. And when he was on that opposite side, he was often used as a decoy rusher to try and get someone to flank to that side to open it up for Will. But he still was able to create pressure. This is also a guy that seems to have pretty good read skills. And he's a pretty fluid athlete. He ran I think a 4.5 40. He's got good lateral movement, fluid hips. So I think this guy still has room to develop. He was another 5th-year senior, so you would think that he's had plenty of time to develop his skills. But again, he didn't see the field a ton at Alabama. But I think if you go back and watch and you see the times when he was asked to be the man, when Will Anderson Jr. isn't in those plays, he acquits himself pretty well. So this is a guy who has, I think, all the physical tools to come up to that level. He's a little smaller at 225. This is not a very big guy. 6'2" also, but he has the frame to pack on a little bit of weight, and he looks like he can still possesses those coverage skills to be that complement that we need in the middle of the defense. So again, if this is a late round target for the Seahawks, then this guy can come in. I think he's going to be an immediate contributor to special teams. He is a thumper. This guy is a pretty sure tackler, but he has a chance to make his way and get some snaps on defense as well.
Yeah, what I saw out of him, he has 8 games started in his 4 or 5 years at Alabama. He was a core special teamer, though, on as many special teams units as he could be on, and he was out there every game doing what he did. So that's where he's going to make an NFL team. He's not going to be thought of as an impactful linebacker for an NFL team, at least right away. But he could walk onto pretty much any NFL special teams unit and at least find some way to contribute. There are some concerns. He does have a shoulder injury he's coming off of. At the end of the season, he tore his rotator cuff and labrum in the same shoulder. So they really need to get good medical on that. Make sure that he's not going to be limited when it comes to high impact collisions and being able to tackle in the open field. I think he's an undrafted free agent, but somebody who will compete when he gets into camp. I say he has decent potential, but right now he's a pretty low floor. So coach him up, maybe practice squad for a year or two, but he's somebody who I think has enough potential to come in and challenge, at least in the special teams category, on a team.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, coming in at number 9, another one of our late round guys. I have SirVocea Dennis out of Pittsburgh. Out of Pitt. Sorry. Yeah, University of Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Out of Pitt.
That's right.
And you have Mahamoud Diabate out of Utah. So I liked SirVocea Dennis. I like guys who have played multiple positions. It gives a little more breadth of knowledge to what these guys are looking at when they're on the field. He was a high school quarterback and a defensive back who converted to linebacker in the 1 year he took at prep school between high school and going to Pitt. So relatively new to the linebacker position, still a little bit raw. He's learning everything he can there, but having that quarterback background, he has a little leg up when it comes to football IQ because he knows what the offense is more than likely trying to do. And I think that makes him a really quick decision maker. He diagnoses plays very efficiently and can get to the hole where he needs to meet a ball carrier. He can diagnose where an outlet pass is going to go. He reads hots very well. He's a little undersized. In fact, I think if he can fit athletically, he might be somebody who could convert back to DB and be a box safety, or just fit that cover linebacker role. But even as a smaller guy, he had posted a 92.1 run defense grade. So he's going to help you wherever he can. I think this guy's just a baller.
Yeah, no, I agree. After watching some tape on this guy, he reminds me a lot of well, I mean, he looks like he looks a little bit like a sweeper position in soccer, where you've got that guy that's basically just there to pick up the trash. Anything that gets through, he's going to cover it. Most of the tape that I watched him, and I was more or less watching the tape because of Kalijah Cansey. But anytime there was a guy being able to get past that first level defender, which was pretty rare when you got a guy like Kalijah Cansey manning that defensive line. But if he did, this guy was right. Dennis was right there to pick him up. He has a great nose for the ball, like you said. This guy's really good at diagnosing plays, takes good angles on the ball carrier, and isn't afraid to get in there. I mean, yeah, like you said, smaller guy. I think he's just over 6 foot, 220 something pounds. But he can use that weight when he needs to.
Yeah, and then your guy here, Mohamed Diabete, or yeah, very.
Yeah, we're gonna go with that.
Mohamed
Diabete. Let's do it.
Yeah. So there you go. Why is he your number 9?
There was some consideration for me to put him up a little bit higher. I'll admit that, because I do think this is the guy who has a chance to kind of sneak up into that late 5th round kind of range. I still think he's probably still a later day 3 guy. And I think most projections have him in that 6th round. But I do think he's got the ability to kind of sneak up. This is just a guy that stands out. Like Pac-12 is usually what I'm watching when I watch college sports. So I got to see some of Utah's games. Again, BYU's that team that I follow up a lot because of my family's history with the college. So I got to see him play, and he just stands out on tape. Not for necessarily any particular reason, but other than I guess I'll say this, and I know you hate me doing NFL comparisons, but go back and watch college tape of KJ Wright, and then go back and watch college tape of Diabete. There are some real similarities there. And I'm not just talking about physically, because they both are very physically similar. They're both taller guys for the linebackers position. They're both over 6'4". They're both in that 230, 240 range. They've got really long arms, good wingspan, especially for the position. But they are just really, really good at knowing where the ball is going to go. Go back and watch tape and just watch Diabete as the play is developing. He is moving the direction that the ball is going to go before the offensive line does. And it's because he's picking up on those little subtle things that the offensive line and the quarterback and running back are doing that point where that play is going to go. He's really good at picking that up. He's a very instinctual player. Again, he didn't put up a ton of impressive numbers in college, but go back and watch. This guy knows his position in football, and I think he's still developing.
Yeah. So my one quick little scout line that I have for him is good athleticism in the open field to pursue in the run defense and able to stay in phase with tight ends and running backs in coverage. Now, with that said, because that's all really good, I think he's a really good pass rusher, but he might have to move to edge when he gets to the NFL.
Okay.
I don't think he can hang as an off-ball linebacker with the skill of the offenses in the NFL, because truly he's a liability in coverage. He allowed 83.3% completion percentage and 110.7 passer rating when he was targeted in coverage. That will not have you starting in anybody's defense in the NFL, but he's good against the run. He's good at rushing the passer. Just let him play at the line of scrimmage as an edge rusher and just go to work. I think that's really where he can shine in the NFL.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything he said. Again, most of what I was looking for was him and run coverage, and he's very, very good at diagnosing those kind of plays. But yeah, it's a little bit disappointing because obviously when you have that size and that wingspan, you want them to be a little bit better in coverage. But again, I think this guy can develop. I think Diabete has the chance to grow as an NFL player. Again, I think he's a late round guy. I think there's a chance he could sneak up into round 5, early round 6. But I do think this is probably a end of the draft kind of guy. But I think teams are going to look at these measurables and watch the instincts that he plays with on the field and think we can do something with that.
Yeah, and I have to say it's pretty brave of you to invoke KJ Wright here with our Seahawks favoring offense here on the podcast.
Got a shout out for my guys, man.
There you go. All right, so at number 8 is actually have him at my number 8. So we'll go ahead and just go right on to you and say in your mid round, last guy you want to spotlight here is Cam Jones out of Indiana.
Yeah, so this is going to be Cam Jones is probably a little bit more of what you would call kind of like an old school thumper at the linebacker position. Not to say he can't work that coverage position, but he's not a super fast guy. I mean, he ran I think in the 4.7s during his pro day. Um, he's got good length. I mean, this guy's pretty prototypical size. He's over 6 foot, 220 plus pounds. Got a pretty decent wingspan, um, but he's not a real lateral fluid guy. Not that he can't go sideline to sideline, but this is definitely a guy that's a little bit more needs to play off ball, needs to be able to step back and kind of see what the play is developing in front of him. But when he's able to do that, he's pretty good. He's pretty good at then getting in on the tackles and finding the ball. He's got a great nose for the ball, but he does have a lot of I don't want to say questions, but there's a lot of little things that he doesn't seem like he does really well at the position. But I think again, this is a guy that if you want to take a chance later in the draft, he's got the skills to develop. He's a really sure tackler. He's got really good hands, and like I said, he's got a nose for the ball. And I think those are things that teams can work with.
Yeah. So for me, immediately there's a question mark because he had an injury shortened season for 2022. He had a foot injury. So you got to get medical. You got to get that check on that. But there's a lot of plus too. He's a former safety. I would like to see a little more of that athleticism show on the field. Might have been scheme that wasn't kind of letting him show all of that. We'll have to see. But he's a very good run defender. And I think where this guy is going to make an impact in the league is he is a good locker room fit. Plus on leadership. He's a 3-time captain, which speaks volumes when you're dealing with college teams. So really somebody I think who can come in, especially if there's a locker room that's not hitting their stride, we'll say. Maybe he can come in and help bring that locker room together.
So you're saying this is a target for the Raiders. Got it.
So coming in at number 7, still in our middle round prospects, I have Owen Papo out of Auburn, and you have DeMarvion Overshone out of Texas. I've been a fan of Owen Papo for a while now. I know he was going to test well, and he tested well, right? Highly athletic. He ran a 4.3940 and then put up 29 reps on the bench, which was the most out of anybody in the linebacker class. So, in fact, that might have been the most out of several positions. Fast, strong, just one of those gym rats, but freaky athletic, core special teamer. Coverage linebacker, or I see him possibly being another convert to safety for a team that plays that box safety, which is basically the type of linebacker that he is. He works sideline to sideline. He has the athleticism to get running backs on wheel routes. He can even slide over and cover slot receivers. He does get a little bit blown up by offensive linemen when they climb to the second level. And that's why I think a team moving him a little farther off the ball would benefit his own game and allow him to impact an NFL team a little better.
Yeah, I mean, at 220 plus pounds, I mean, not a lot of these guys are going to stand up to an offensive lineman coming and charging at him. Yeah, look, he's got a really well-rounded game. I really do like this guy. He's not on my list, and the only reason he's not on my list is because he would have fallen for me somewhere between that top 5 and then the next kind of few guys that we're going to be talking about. But yeah, I mean, I know that you've been talking about him since we started looking at the combine, and when he obviously ran that 40 time, I understood why you were talking about him. I think it's kind of funny. We were talking before about how we're not really sure if the Seahawks are going to be looking to draft a linebacker in this draft or if they're going to push that position off. But I think if they're looking to the future and they say, hey, what we really need, if they're pretty comfortable with Brooks and they think, okay, he's going to come back, he's going to be that captain in the middle for us, he's going to man the line, be our guy that's going to either rush the passer or sit back and help in run coverage, but really just take care of that middle. What we need is a more off-ball linebacker. Ooh, sorry about that, guys. I just kicked my computer. More of an off-ball linebacker that's going to help diagnose his plays, come in and run support, but can also drop back into coverage when necessary. Then the guys that they're looking for is going to be someone like Owen. He's got all those skills. I think that Seahawks, at least us, we think that their plan for Jamal Adams was to be that run support linebacker, to kind of drop down in there and to be that in the box safety. slash linebacker, so that we could have our other guys kind of sit back in coverage. And yeah, they're physically, this guy's got all those same kind of tools. So I mean, he's, like you said, lightning fast, good athleticism, and clearly he's a pretty strong dude. So
Yeah. So DeMarvion Overshone out of Texas is somebody I've actually seen mocked to the Seahawks several times. And so I'm not shocked to see him on your list. I know you like Texas players.
I do.
What do you see in DeMarvion Overshone that has you so high on him?
He's just, I mean, he's built like your prototypical inside linebacker. I mean, the guy's pretty tall, just I think he's between 6'2", 6'3". He's a little bit bigger, about 235, 240 pounds. And he plays like a big man in the middle. And he's another one of those guys that's really good at picking up the trash. Anything that's coming through, he's able to diagnose where the ball's going to go, especially in the run game, and find the holes that he can come in and fill that gap so that there's nothing for that runner to take advantage of. The biggest knock I have on him, and the only reason why I can't put him any higher, is because he tends to be an arm tackler, which is not what you want out of your middle linebacker. So I think, I do think it's kind of funny him getting mocked to the Seahawks a lot. But if there's one thing the Seahawks can do, despite what we saw on the field last year, is teaching people how to tackle properly in the NFL. That's kind of been a Seahawks signature thing for years. So I don't know about you guys, but I was shocked to watch them miss tackles the way that they missed, especially early on in the 2022 season. So hopefully that's a thing of the past and we can move on from there. And I think if they're not so sure about Brooks and they think, okay, we're going to need another guy to be that thumper in the middle that can command that defense, this is a guy that they should definitely be taking a look at, because he has all of those skills. He was the guy on defense calling out the protect, or calling out the plays on defense for Texas. He knows that role and can do it really, really well. And the one thing he needs to improve on is his tackling. So, yeah, that's my take on Overshone.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. He actually had a missed tackle rate of 13.2%, which is very high. So something he absolutely needs to clean up, because that will get him out of the league faster than anything else. He's a well-rounded off-ball linebacker. Once again, another former safety. And he's athletic enough to work sideline to sideline. You see him oftentimes cleaning up after other defenders' mistakes, which is probably, that goes hand in hand, because with a 13.2% missed tackle rate, those defenders were probably cleaning up after him at times too.
Fair enough.
All right. Moving on to our number 6 prospect.
Hey, look at that. Round.
We agree. We both put Henry To'o out of Alabama. And yeah, I actually was a pretty big fan. He is highly productive. Between the last 2 seasons, 21 and 22, he had 207 tackles. He's a physical, intelligent linebacker. He plays instinctively. He has the lateral agility and quickness to quickly adjust to fill a hole, to counter what the offense is doing. He needs to improve his block shed a little bit, but as far as tools, he has tools for days. So some linebacking coach out there is going to be very happy when their team drafts Henry To'o.
Yeah, look. This I think is one of the better. I think there's a few guys that I think we could see sneak up into into the early part of day 2, and he's one of them. He's got every skill you'd want at the position. This is a guy who transferred to Alabama and immediately became the starter. For those of you who don't know, he was originally at Tennessee, and he was a star at Tennessee. I think they were probably pretty sad to lose him, because everything that he showed at Alabama, he was already shown at Tennessee. But when he hit the Alabama field, he took his game to the next level. Now you can say, is that because he was surrounded by nothing but all-stars? And I think that's a fair point. But that's what the NFL is. It's all superstars. All these guys were stars in college. That's how they made it into the NFL. So these are all guys that are really good at maximizing what they do well, which opens up the field for their teammates to do the exact same thing. And here in Seattle, I know that we've been kind of struggling, especially last year on defense, with this transition to the 3-4. But I think we've got the guys already on the team, especially in the front seven, or I want to say front five, not counting the middle linebackers. That we can bring him in. He's a plug and play middle linebacker. He would easily slot in. I think he's already a better player than what at least Devin Bush showed in his last couple of years in Pittsburgh, and obviously he's going to be better than we've got in Brooks, who can't play currently. So yeah, I think if the Seahawks took a chance on him on day two, it's because they didn't like what they saw out of Devin Bush. But either way, he's still a guy that I think if they wanted to target him, he's going to come in and have a role immediately on that defense.
Yeah. And so going into our top five, this is how our top five fell. In my big board, this is my top five. So going on number five, my number five is Dorian Williams out of Tulane. And your number five is Trenton Simpson out of Clemson. So Dorian Williams, I think, is a very good coverage linebacker and special teamer. In fact, in college, he clocked over 700 special team snaps. So he's seen a lot of reps. He's been in just about every situation, and he excels. He has good athleticism, 4.4940. He broad jumped 120 inches. He's got a 6'8" wingspan. So that helps him get in there and wrap up good, solid tackler. It also helps him in coverage and get pass breakups in the pass. He is a high ceiling, but average floor player. He probably would benefit from adding about 15 pounds as long as it didn't take too much off of his athleticism. But he's definitely somebody I think has more potential, and that's why he ended up going into my number five spot.
Yeah, this is a guy that I definitely looked at. Again, this is similar to Papo. This is a guy that I think falls just outside of the top five for me, but definitely is above those guys that I've got in those middle tier rounds. If you go back and look at tape on him at Tulane, he was dominating the teams that he played against Tulane. Now, obviously, Tulane, not a big Power 5 school. They're playing some lesser competition, though they definitely have games against some bigger schools as well. But you look at his numbers from just this last year, and those are just fantastic numbers for a linebacker. I mean, he had, I think, 5 or 6 sacks. He had 2 interceptions. He was great in coverage, over 80 tackles. This is a really, really well-rounded player, so I'm glad you've got him on your list. This is another guy that I think if the Seahawks really are going to look at it, taking a middle linebacker higher in this draft, they could do worse than Williams.
Agreed. So Trenton Simpson out of Clemson has had an interesting draft projection, you might say. Hey, I see you have him here at number 5.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a pattern when we talk about Clemson players, whether we're talking about Miles Murphy coming off the edge or we're talking about Brian Bresee at the defensive tackle. These are guys that I think are in their own mind superstars, which is totally fair. I mean, Clemson's a great school, and they were probably very, very highly recruited coming out of high school. And they're all superstars in their own mind, which is not a bad thing necessarily, but it can cause you to have some slip ups on the field. And when you get into a position where you just think you can do no wrong, some people can embarrass you. And there were certainly times where Trenton Simpson got embarrassed on the field in college. Now, as far as measurables go, this guy is a pretty freak athlete. I mean, you look at a guy who ran just over 4.40. He's 6'2". He's 240 pounds. Got really long arms, big hands. He's got great lateral movement. He had a pretty decent vertical jump, I think over 40 inches. So this is a physical freak. And again, sometimes when NFL teams are looking to draft players, it's all about projection. I mean, technically it's all about projection no matter who they're looking at, because none of these guys have played in the NFL. But Simpson's, just physical traits and measurables are kind of hard to overlook.
Yeah. Listen, let's not sugarcoat it. He had a better 2021 than he had a 2022. But I think that was the case for all the Clemson players. He's a prototypical linebacker, right? Especially for this modern NFL. He has ideal size. He's an explosive athlete. You said just over a 4.40. He actually clocked an official 4.43 40. He's good in coverage. He has the tools to be a successful at rushing the passer. He can play sideline to sideline. There is a lot to like about Trenton Simpson. He was probably preseason projected as the number 1 or 2 linebacker in the class. And so he slipped a little bit due to that 2022 production. But you look at his 2021 tape and he looks every bit a first rounder. And I think there's a shot he might slip into the late first round or potentially early second round.
Yeah.
All right. So he's actually my number 4. So we can just go right into talking about the guy you have at 4, and that's Drew Sanders out of Arkansas.
Yeah. So Drew Sanders is another one of those guys that I think might be more of an edge rusher, like you were talking about before with Overshawn, than he Cam Jones, than he is a true middle linebacker. And part of that's just because of what his skill set is. I mean, this is another really tall, well-built linebacker. I mean, he's over 6'4", 240 pounds, really lanky, really long arms. And he obviously acquitted himself pretty well rushing the passer. But he has shown the ability to diagnose the run, sit back in coverage. He's not terrible in coverage. He's a very, very sure tackler. I didn't really hear much about him because I'm not a big Arkansas fan. I don't watch a ton of SEC stuff. But he has been mocked to the Seahawks ad nauseum the last couple of mock drafts that I've seen from some of these guys. And it's because I think, like we were questioning, do the Seahawks need to be looking at linebacker earlier in this draft? And that's why he's been highlighted by a lot of these guys, because this is a guy who has all those skills to kind of come in and play along. I think would be a pretty good complement to Bobby Wagner in the middle of the field, where he can be a guy in coverage, but can also slip in and help us out in pass rush when we need it. So, yeah, I think it's another one of those guys that has been a pretty sneaky riser in drafts. We could see him go late in day 1 or early on day 2.
Yeah. And I mean, he finished his career at Arkansas, but he started his career at Alabama. And Alabama, they draft those highly touted recruits and good athletes. And while he was at Alabama, he actually played edge. And so if you watch when he rushes the passer, you see a lot of those pass rush traits that he got from being an edge player that now he's using from the off-ball linebacker position. So he is a plus pass rusher. He's fluid in his field work at the combine, which you saw on tape when he was in coverage and when he was mirroring to get into the hole. He plays sideline to sideline. If I was going to knock him a little bit, it's that he needs to add a little bit of weight, I think, to really be a true box linebacker. But let's face it, the NFL kind of is going away from all those power run styles. So I think in the 230s, low 240s, he'll be fine.
I mean, he's got the frame to put on the weight. So if that's what teams want to do with him, I think that's going to be a pretty easy fix.
Yeah. And once again, we're thinking along the same lines. Drew Sanders was my number 4. I mean, was your number 4, and he's my number 3. So your number 3 is Noah Sewell out of Oregon.
Yeah. So Noah Sewell is a little bit more of like a throwback inside linebacker for me. This guy's not going to wow you with his athleticism, even though he's got decent athletic traits. I mean, he's not slow. He did run, I think, a mid 4.6 40. But he's got the length and he can move pretty well laterally. But he's just a big thumper and a big run stuffer right in that middle. If you go back and watch tape of him at Oregon, that was his job. His job was, I'm going to look in this backfield and see what they're doing, and I'm going to prevent them from getting past my defensive line. He's a big one gap shooter. I think he might be a little bit outdated in his style for today's modern NFL. But I think if we're looking to bring a guy in that's going to move into that where we have Bobby Wagner right now, and that sit and diagnose middle linebacker position to kind of be that more in the box and not have to worry so much about coverage, he's got all the traits to do it.
Yeah, and he's got a big frame, 6'2", 250, a little bit shorter arms than you'd expect, but yeah, I mean, he ran 4.64, jumped 33 inches, broad jump 9 feet 7 inches. So not amazing athletic numbers, but
yeah, but not Not
adequate.
subpar either.
Yeah, I'd say adequate, especially the way that the linebackers in the NFL are trending towards the more athletic linebacker. He is starting to slip farther down that list. And I think you saw that in his pre-draft process. Before the season, Noah Sewell would have gone second, third, fourth linebacker. I don't think he's going to be selected until maybe the third or fourth round. And he's just been falling in this process. A lot of it is I see him as an edge in the NFL. And if you look at him against the other edge players, he's not going to crack top 10 in this class because this is a really deep edge class. Pass rushing, I see as his best skill set. He's got a really high motor. He plays with that nasty physical trait that you want to see in a linebacker. He is not very aware in coverage. I would say his coverage awareness is marginal at best. So if he can make it transition to be a situational pass rusher early, develop some of those traits to play on more downs later on in his career, I think that's the projection that will let him have the best success in the NFL.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. He's definitely not someone that you want to be in a heavy zone scheme. I think he's definitely more of a man-to-man kind of player. But again, if you want someone that's going to just come in and put a hurting on those guys trying to push that ball up to the second level, he's got, again, go back and watch, or there's a reason why he was being a little bit more highly touted before the draft process initially started. And it's because his game tape at Oregon is really good game tape. This man's a thumper. He can get in there and put the hurt on. He does, like you said, have that really kind of old school linebacker mentality. He definitely plays with a mean streak. And that's something that I still love to this day. So,
yeah. So obviously you're higher on him than I am. I think he can contribute. Definitely has good bloodlines. His family member is Penei Sewell. They're playing tackle for the Detroit Lions. So, he's got the tools, and I think he can succeed. He needs to be in the right system and coached up the right way. So for our number 1 and number 2, I'm actually going to reveal them both because you and I like to flip.
They're the same guys.
Same guys, different positions. So I have Jack Campbell as my number 1 and Diane Henley as my number 2. And you have the opposite, Diane Henley number 1 and Jack Campbell number 2. So Diane Henley out of Washington State, a really intriguing prospect. Former wide receiver, and he brings that athleticism and offensive knowledge to the linebacker position. You can see it, the mental processing going on, that he's using that wide receiver knowledge. Really good cover backer, great athletics, 4.54 in the 40, 35-inch vert, 125-inch broad jump, explosive first step. He flows to the ball carrier, but he's raw. He's played the position for 2.5 years, and there's a steep learning curve, and he's that good now. Just imagine when you get him in an NFL position room for a season or two. I mean, sky's the limit. Diane Henley has probably the highest ceiling of any linebacker in this class.
And you've just exactly summed up my argument for having him at number 1 instead of number 2. Because yes, this is one of the most instinctual football players you will ever see on the field. This man knows football, and again, that's partly due to because he hasn't really found his position in the NFL. But I love guys like that. Look, not to bring up a guy from a few drafts ago who I'm still really high on, and I hope the Seahawks find a way to steal him from our rivals over in Arizona. But this guy reminds me a lot of Isaiah Simmons. Now, not in the size speed comparison, because Isaiah Simmons is a different athlete. Like that, Isaiah Simmons is quite a bit bigger, but they're both incredibly fluid athletes that are just play with nothing but raw instincts out on the field, throwing themselves around, taking, they take their line and they run with it, which can lead to some missteps sometimes. I mean, obviously, sometimes if you diagnose a play incorrectly and sell out for what you think it's going to be, and it's not that, you can look a little foolish. And you will find some of that game tape on Diane Henley, but not a lot of it, because he's more often than not right about where this ball is going to go. And when he's right, He knows how to get there in a hurry and bottle up the play. And I mean, I'm a big Washington fan anyway. I don't really love the fact that he went to WSU, but I did get to see a lot of his game tape because of that. So I'm glad he's there. I love this guy. If the Seahawks are going to take a linebacker in either late in round 1 or early in round 2, please let it be Henley.
Yeah. And like we said earlier, we think the Seahawks need an athletic coverage linebacker, and Henley can step right in and fill that role in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Devin Bush, who?
So I kind of talked about your guy first when I could have just talked about my guy. So why don't I give you first crack at Jack Campbell?
Jack Campbell is one of the most imposing NFL or defenders that you'll ever see. I mean, let's just talk about the physicality of this guy. He's 6'5", which is really tall for the inside linebacker position. I mean, he stands over some of the defensive linemen that we've seen in this draft. He weighs about 250 pounds, which is again on the heavier side for that middle linebacker position. But that weight and that height doesn't seem to slow this man down. He didn't have the fastest 40 time. Runs 4.65, but watch him on the field. He is a much faster player with pads on than he is in underwear. And he is, he could do it all. This man can hit you hard if he needs to. He's really good in coverage, a really secure tackler. When he gets his hands on you, you're done. He's not going to let you go. I love Jack Campbell. I just really love Deion Henley.
Yeah. Yeah. You nailed it on the head there. Elite size. Right. And on top of that, he was a team captain. So big guy, productive, captain, good locker room, good high character guy. He was the number 1 graded Power 5 linebacker. PFF gave him a 91.7 grade on the season. That was the best of any Power 5 conference linebacker. I talked about Dan Henley having the highest ceiling of any linebacker in this class. Well, Jack Campbell has the highest floor.
Oh, by far.
He can walk into any defense in the NFL and contribute. I think he could walk into any defense in the NFL and take somebody's job, right? He could be a starter day one. He was the 2022 Buckus Award winner. He is a very good tackler. He can stack and shed blockers. Don't have any problems with him when linemen get to the second level. He is an underrated pass defender as well. We've talked about coverage backers. His PFF coverage grade is a 92.9. So he's just a very good prospect. He's a prospect that borders on elite. I think people were worried about athleticism. He ran in the 4.6s in the 40. I don't have a problem with that as a middle linebacker. But his change of direction numbers were really good. His short shuttle was a 4.24, and his 3-cone was a 6.74. And that blows some of these guys out of the water, even guys who are supposed to be more athletic linebackers. So I don't have a problem with him. I think he's a little better prospect than the rest of the scouting world kind of has him pegged at right now. They're just scared of a weak class. And the fact that off-ball linebackers aren't what they used to be. 5 years ago, Jack Campbell would have gone in the top 5. 10 years ago, he would have gone in the top 5. But we're moving away from traditional linebackers, and that's hurt Jack Campbell a little bit. He might not even go until the second round just due to trends in the NFL. And I think that's a shame because he is a fantastic prospect.
Yeah, look, I not to go off subject a little bit, but what is going on at Iowa? They apparently just find physical freaks and have them play football. Whether it's Jack Campbell at 6'5", Lucas Van Ness at 6'6", or their tight end whose name is escaping me, who's also 6'6". But they just apparently go out. Let's just find. Thank you. Let's just go out and find the biggest physical freaks that we can and have them come play football at Iowa. And look, they're doing it better than almost anybody because all of their top tier guys in this draft are in the top 10 on everyone's list at their position. So Jack Campbell's in good company.
Yeah, you've heard the term country strong or farm strong. Like that's what you got out there in Iowa. I mean, these guys are ballers. And
Apparently, corn-fed is still a thing. So
Yes, it is. All right. Well, this has been the Let's Talk Seahawks top 10 linebacker prospect episode. Thank you for watching. As always, go Hawks.
go Hawks.